Imagine walking into your child's public school classroom, not to learn algebra, not to study history, but to be greeted by one of the world's oldest religious texts hanging prominently on the wall. For some Americans, that's a welcome return to traditional values. For others, it's the most serious challenge to the constitutional separation of church and state in generations. Across America, several state governments, predominantly conservative, Republican-led states, are passing laws that intentionally expand the role of Christianity within public education. Mandatory displays of the Ten Commandments, state-funded religious schools, prayer initiatives, Bible-based curriculum. Supporters argue America was founded as a Christian nation. Critics argue these laws violate one of the Constitution's most fundamental principles, that government should neither establish nor favor religion. This isn't simply another political disagreement. It's becoming one of the defining constitutional battles of our generation. And depending on how the courts respond, the relationship between religion and government in America may be permanently changed. So what does the Constitution actually say? The First Amendment begins with 16 words that have shaped American religious liberty for more than 2 centuries. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. These 2 clauses work together. The Establishment Clause prevents government from creating or endorsing a religion. The Free Exercise Clause protects every individual's right to practice or not to practice a religion. It is important to understand that the Constitution does not contain the exact phrase separation of church and state. That wording comes from a letter written by President Thomas Jefferson to the Danbury Baptist Association, in which he described a wall of separation between church and state. Over time, courts have used that concept to interpret the Establishment Clause. The idea has been reinforced in numerous Supreme Court decisions, though its application has evolved over time. For decades, courts generally interpreted this to mean public schools should not endorse one religion over another. Students were always free to pray privately. Schools themselves, however, were expected to remain religiously neutral. That understanding is now being challenged. The most visible examples have emerged in Republican-controlled or red states. In 2024, Louisiana became the first state to require public school classrooms to display the Ten Commandments. The law was quickly challenged in federal court, and enforcement has been blocked while litigation continues. Texas has debated legislation encouraging or requiring the display of the Ten Commandments in classrooms, and has expanded policies that support religious expression in schools. Separately, the state has approved Bible-infused instructional materials for elementary schools. Districts may choose whether to adopt these materials, and schools that do receive additional state funding. This has sparked debate over whether financial incentives effectively encourage religious instruction in public education. Oklahoma has also attracted national attention. State Superintendent Ryan Walters has promoted greater use of the Bible in public education and announced plans related to Bible instruction and classroom materials, though many of these initiatives have faced legal challenges and resistance from local school districts. Arkansas and several other Republican-led states have considered or introduced similar proposals involving religious displays or expanded religious instruction. While not every proposal becomes law, the overall trend is clear. The movement is concentrated primarily in conservative states, where elected officials argue that Christianity has played a foundational role in American society and should therefore have a more visible place in public education. Supporters describe these measures as restoring historical context. Opponents describe them as government endorsement of one religion. Prayer in schools is one of America's oldest constitutional controversies. Many people believe prayer has been completely banned from public schools, but that isn't true. Students have always been allowed to pray individually or voluntarily, providing it does not disrupt school activities. What courts have generally prohibited are prayers that are organized, directed, or endorsed by public school officials. Beginning in the 1960s, Supreme Court decisions struck down official school-sponsored prayers, concluding that government should not compose or promote religious exercise in public schools. More recently, however, the court has taken a different approach in some cases. In 2022, the court ruled in favor of a high school football coach who prayed on the field after games, finding that his personal religious expression was protected under the First Amendment. Supporters viewed the decision as strengthening religious liberty. Critics worried that it blurred the line between private expression and government endorsement, particularly given the influence teachers and coaches may have over students. The debate today is no longer about whether religion belongs in American society, it's about where government involvement begins. Texas has become one of the most closely watched states in this debate. Rather than simply displaying religious texts, state officials approved optional elementary instructional materials that include Bible stories and references alongside lessons in reading and history. Districts that adopt these state-developed materials receive additional funding. Supporters argue the Bible has had an enormous influence on literature, history, art, and Western civilization. They say students cannot fully understand history without understanding biblical references. Critics respond that integrating religious stories into public school instruction, even if framed as history or literature, risks privileging Christianity over other faiths, or no faith at all. Because adoption of these materials is voluntary, districts across Texas have made different decisions, reflecting the diversity of views within the state itself. Whether these policies remain in place may ultimately depend on future court rulings. So why does this matter constitutionally? Well, the debate extends far beyond religion. It concerns the balance of power between state governments, federal courts, and constitutional protections. Over the past several years, the Supreme Court has generally interpreted the First Amendment in ways that provide broader protection for religious expression in public life than earlier courts often did. The court has increasingly emphasized historical practices and traditions when evaluating Establishment Clause cases, rather than applying older legal tests that once guided these decisions. Supporters believe this corrects decades of excessive restrictions on religion. Opponents argue it weakens long-standing safeguards against government endorsement of religion. The current court's conservative majority means that cases involving school prayer, religious displays, and faith-based education are being evaluated through a different constitutional framework than they might have been 20 or 30 years ago. Whether these newer interpretations endure will depend on future court decisions, changes in the court's membership over time, and the specific facts of each case. The debate over the Ten Commandments in public schools is about far more than a single religious document. It raises fundamental questions. Should government promote religious heritage? Should public schools remain strictly neutral towards religion? Can a nation protect both religious freedom and religious neutrality at the same time? Reasonable people answer these questions differently. What is clear is that several Republican-led states have adopted or proposed measures that expand the visibility of Christianity in public education, while those measures continue to face constitutional challenges in the court. The Supreme Court's evolving interpretation of the First Amendment will play a significant role in determining which of these policies survive and which do not. Whatever your own beliefs may be, the outcome of these disputes will shape how future generations understand both religious liberty and constitutional government. Religious education in schools is a very hot topic across the board in today's America. Christian groups are virulently arguing for recognition and a return to the Christian beliefs that govern their own private lives. The dangerous precedent, of course, is that one day under a Muslim influence, given that it is one of the fastest growing religious groups in the US, could one day use the same argument to introduce Quran-based teaching into the same learning system. In any case, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, and thanks again for watching.